there, ref. That she got the ball. Yes, good afternoon, Tottenham fans, wherever you're tuning in from around the world. Welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys, Dave, Jack, Storin, and Dermo. And we will bring you live build-up ahead of tonight's Champions League game against Bodo Glimt. And, of course, in match day 1, we did beat Villarreal. So match day 2, it's very important we put the points on the board and keep racking them up. But, Jacko, how are you feeling ahead of this conflict? How are you feeling ahead of this game? Are you confident or still carrying some Wolves frustration into this?
Frustration from feels like some of the same problems from last season just carrying on into this season. And you and I have been dissecting that a lot. Just feels like the forward line struggles to put away. When we only create a few chances, it feels like we create at least 1 or 2 good opportunities to score. And then you never know what happens from there. But I just don't have faith in many of the players to actually put any of the chances away. But then, the happiness is just that we do stay in games a bit more because we're more defensively solid. I don't know. The only frustration I have is maybe it's just some patterns from last season potentially carrying on into this season. But maybe that's to be expected sometimes when, you bring in a new manager, but you haven't necessarily totally revamped a certain area of the squad. So maybe that's my only frustration. But I'm actually excited. Champions League is kind of a nice way to palate cleanse yourself and potentially bounce back because it's a massive competition and we're back in the Arctic Circle before it gets way too cold. So I'm actually in a relatively positive mood.
Don't get me wrong, I am buzzing for Champions League. I absolutely love Champions League nights. However, I'm not going to lie, I'm still very frustrated with the Wolves game at the weekend. It's I think it's an opportunity missed. I think it's drop points. I know we're still sitting fourth in the league, but it was just a piss poor performance. And, you could see maybe in previous games, the way we were playing, that it was sort of building up. We were due a performance like that. But tonight, I'm not giving them a free pass. I don't want to see anyone, any hangover from it. I don't want to see any of them players sulking tonight. I want to see them go out there and put in a committed performance, a professional performance, and go out there and put, some 3 points on the board and hopefully go and score some goals tonight. Like, I know these can take scalps in their place, but we made light work of them last year in the semi-finals, 5-1 on aggregate, despite, all the trepidation going into the game. So for me, I think there's a golden opportunity for them to sort of put things right from the weekend. It'll be interesting to see how hungry they are because, in fairness, Thomas Frank's saying all the right things in the post and pre-match games, where he's saying, look, he was honest. He says it was a shambolic performance. It wasn't a great performance. He's been honest that we've been a bit lackluster going forward. He hasn't hid from it. And at least he's well aware of the problems. But for some reason, he just can't get, a tune out of the players in some of these games. These games happen too often at Tottenham. We only had one against Bournemouth there before the last international break and then another one against Wolves. We just can never really get some consistency going, especially when, we've had a good run of games to be able to sort of build that consistency. We're going into a tough run of fixtures coming up, and I'm absolutely dreading it, because of performances like this, because our front line isn't really clicking. I can see some danger on the horizon. So it's night like this where they have to try and build some confidence and they have to go and try and score some goals so that when we come into the busy fixture schedule, that we can survive it. So I'm not going to lie, I am carrying some frustration over from the Wolves game. Dermo, this could be a really awkward game. We're at the Ashmere Stadium. It's only 8,000 seats, but the crowd is lively. Sold out, freezing conditions, plastic pitch, and a team with nothing to lose. Are you worried tonight?
Look, half for me is, half for me isn't. Thanks again for having me on, Dave. I always feel like, I know I did Real Tottenham TV last week. It feels like I'm coming home on here. This is where I feel comfortable. This is where I feel more relaxed and get my views out. Look, I think my head is telling me we need to be careful tonight. My heart's telling me we don't need to worry because we're going to turn up and smash them as always. But my head's telling me, hang on a minute. There's no easy team in the Champions League. Doesn't matter if it's Bodo Glimt or wherever. Anything can happen. I know you're shaking your head, but anything can happen in the game of football. It's over 90 minutes. It's up to us to turn up and start off well and get the goals in. But I have no faith in our front three, Dave. I'm sorry, I don't. I've no faith in Richarlison. I mean, he's as useless as a turkey looking at Bernard Matthews and being Christmas Eve. That's how useful he is. You can't expect Simmons and Kudos to do all the work because they're going to run out of steam very quickly. We know Simmons is still trying to get used to playing in our system, get used to being in another country. We can't depend on Kudos. So then what? You're depending on Bergville and Sarr or Bentancur to chip in with goals. You can't expect them to do that either. Yes, you expect them to chip in, but you can't expect them to carry the team. So, yes, I am slightly worried. That Wolves game really disturbed me. I thought we were woeful. But this is a chance for us to bounce back and get 3 points tonight. But there's no easy games. Do you know? Bodo Glimt were 2-0 down against Prague and came back and drew 2-2 in the first game. We should beat them. Yes, we should go out and smash them tonight. But this is Tottenham. You know, we thought we got rid of this Dr. Tottenham malarkey. But yeah, I am slightly worried.
I do get the point that you're making in terms of, like, I hate coming into these games where Tottenham should win and you do expect them to go and score goals, because that's what everyone expects heading into these games. However, Tottenham always make hard work of a lot of these games. It never really goes to plan. So I do understand your point. However, we've had a very favourable draw in the Champions League. I would argue there are easy teams in the Champions League. Tonight should be one of them. We spanked them, you know, in the Europa League semi-final. We've got Slavia Prague, Copenhagen, teams like that. I'm sorry. If we're losing to them, it's not because they're good teams. It's because we're absolutely shambolic. You know, most other big teams around Europe bite their hand off for the draw that we got.
Yeah.
You know, and some of the teams that we're facing. And a lot of them would look at them and go, well, that's a banker, that's a banker, that's a banker. Whereas Tottenham fans, I feel like we just can't do that because we are liable of slipping up at any moment. Anyway, down to you, sorry, my man, and then we'll start welcoming some people at home. But this could be a really, or we've seen that, you know, what a tricky place Bodo Glimt can be. We're well aware of some of the scalps they took there down the years. And it's very tricky for sort of visiting teams going there. How much of a factor is the environment, you know, the cold, the plastic pitch, you know, the ruckus fan base?
Just correct you all, we're not playing in the Champions League tonight. We're playing Europa Cup. If you remember last year, we was told we wouldn't play Bodo or Frankfurt in the Champions League. They're not good enough to be in this competition. So you need to catch up, lads. Look, we know full well that going to these places can be really hard, you know, playing in the cold. But look, the gods have favoured us again. We're going at the right time of year. It's not going to be freezing. Yeah, you're going into a foreign country with, you know, fans that want to knock us, you know, not knock us out, but beat us. You know, we're the big scalp. We're another cup final for them. But look, lads, it's not about them. It's about us. If we play to our strengths or anywhere near our strengths, we're beating them. It's as simple as that. If the team don't turn up yet again, then there's every chance there could be. Do I call it an upset? I don't know if it's an upset because, you know, they're in the Champions League, so they've earned the place there. So in a sense, it's not an upset as such, but it would be an upset, and it would be unspeakable if we go there and lose. I mean, Jesus Christ, the meltdown after drawing to Wolves was enough. It's, you know, I'm fed up of all these meltdowns because the team's played poorly or whatever. But yeah, we should be going there tonight, and there shouldn't be any reason we're not coming away with a Dermatron scoreline of 4-5-0, really. You know, I don't think we will quite get that high because I don't think we are firing enough. But look, if we come away with anything less than, say, a 3-0 win, then yeah, there's something not right, isn't there?
Yeah, there's something not right. Look, for me, like, I get it, right? You know, the artificial pitch, you know, it's different to what these players are used to. And, you know, the ball travels faster, the ball bounces differently. It's a bit more unpredictable and stuff like that. You know, also, you know, you're more at risk of getting injuries on them plastic pitches, you know, when you're expected to turn sharply and move quickly and stuff like that. So, you know, it creates a bit of a headache there. The dressing rooms at the Bodo Glimt stadium are small. It's a small sort of stadium. It's almost like, you know, if you put it to the English pyramid, probably like, you know, a blue square Premier team stadium or something like that. You know, they don't get all the lush surroundings that they're used to getting. And we seen when we went down to Tamworth how much it can really affect us, you know, sort of the environment in general. But for me, these games are just all about mentality. If you go out there with the right teams, you know, or with the right attitude and stuff like that, then there's no reason why we shouldn't be beating these and putting in a professional performance. If you go out there sort of half-arsing it, or you're affected by the cold, or you're worried about the pitch and stuff, well, team like Bodo, they use it to great advantage. They use all that sort of environment when they bring the European giants there to create an environment that they're not used to. It's almost that sort of small village mentality and, that underdog mentality, and they use it very well to their advantage. So it's just up to us to do the right things in the opening 15, 20 minutes, show we're up for the game, look to go and put them under pressure. Don't show them any respect. It did worry me a little bit, in the pre-match press conference. I know Frank has to say it. I'm not making a point of it, but it worried me a little bit when he says we've got huge respect for Bodo, and it's sort of like, that concerns me a little bit. It's like I would rather us walk into these places and show them no respect, just have an air of grace about us and stuff like that. Sort of, that mentality. I think having that mentality would make these sort of games easy.
But Dave,
because we turn up half-assed.
Yeah, but and I don't mean this rudely, so please don't take it that way. But that's crap, because we said all this last year, and everybody was telling us that we're going to go there and we're going to struggle on the plastic pitch. It's a small team, it's a small ground, and it's this and it's that, and it's the Arctic Circle. And we proved it all wrong. And there is no excuses for Tottenham Hotspur to go there tonight and lose. There is no excuse. No, the pitch,
I agree.
The team, the atmosphere, the cold. There is absolutely no excuse tonight to go there and lose. Full stop. If we lose tonight, then, it's all those excuses are going to come out, and I get that, but we're not playing in freezing conditions, which I get. I mean, the only thing that out of that I would say is a concern is injuries on that pitch. But other than that, we proved last year we can go there and do it. So why is it any different?
No, I agree. I agree. I'm just saying in general, that.
Yeah, no, that's why I said I didn't want to be. Yeah. That's why I said I didn't want to be rude to you, but
I know. Look, there is no excuses for tonight. Like you see it already written. Oh, it's a tough place to go. This, that, and the other. Like you said, we made light work of it last year. Now, look, you have to take note. They have had big scalps there. Celtic went there, got destroyed. Roma went there, didn't play well. Lazio went there, didn't play well. I think they lost as well. So they have pulled some big scalps there. It just shows if you are that 10% off, or you just don't fancy it, you can very easily find yourself on the wrong end of the scoreline there, I guess is what I'm trying to get round to. But look, let's welcome some people in at home. There's already over 200 people watching, and then we will crack on with more talking points because I got a lot tonight. Let's go, says Hope. The panel are well. I'm confident of a win tonight. We seem to do well away from home, although the pitch is well dodged. We have won there before. Yeah, home form not so terrific at the moment, is it? It's like they're afraid of playing in front of their own home crowd. Mark New says, big up, Dave. Good to see you, Mark New. Hopefully you're keeping well, buddy. We also have Shem Tam, hey Jack, Dave, Mr. Dermo, and Mr. Soren. I guess we don't get Mr. Jack. Hope you're all well today. Agree with Jack. Same problems, different manager, which says a lot about the mentality of these players. Interesting point, Shem Tam. Karate FC says, come on, you Spurs. Tom Wheels and base covers says, long time listener, first time commenter, absolutely buzzing for the game. Score prediction is a 2-0 to Spurs. Thank you for all the brilliant Spurs.
Thank you, Tom.
Come on, you Spurs. Well, thank you, Tom. I presume, the name is maybe you do covers of songs and stuff. Maybe it's your YouTube channel or something like that. If it is, feel free to put the link in there if you want people to get over and have a listen. So big yourself up, my man, and thank you very much. 2-0. To be honest with you, I will take a 2-0 and I'll sort of just go to bed content. But I would like to see that front line sort of just rip a team apart at some stage, put 3, 4, 5 by them, create a lot of chances. If it's 2-0 and the keeper's had a great game, their keeper's had a great game and, made a lot of great saves, okay, I can sort of take that. But I don't want a 2-0 where we've made hard work of it, Tom. I would like to sort of dispatch these easily enough tonight if we can. Big up, my man. Really appreciate the support. Ghosted says, big up, Dave, Jack, and the panel. Good to see you, Ghosted. Hopefully you're keeping well. Rain Man's in the house as well. Afternoon all. Good to see you, Rain. We also have Mr. Fraser in the house. Big up, lads. And Jack, good to see you, sir. Hopefully you're keeping well. Mark New says, big up, Dave, Jack, and panel. Bodo won't be as easy opponents as last season with their best players back. It's an open game. They're not chasing a result. Score early. Put them to the sword. Absolutely agree with that, Mark New. Alex Ferrin says, Lucas needs to be told sometimes not moving is just as effective as when he gets the ahead of the ball, or it's just as effective. Sometimes he gets ahead of the ball too early, and if we lose possession, our midfield is exposed, plus he keeps on getting in the way. Completely agree with this, Alex. Completely would agree with you here. This is something that I've tried to sort of, point out as well, that I think when Bentancur plays there, I know a lot of people maybe get frustrated. He doesn't sort of venture too far forward. But I would argue, I think at times Bergvall just vacates it unnecessarily and leaves so much space and much more easier for them to play through our midfield or get through that midfield when he plays in that deeper position. And also, when he's being moved back there in games, look how much trouble he gets us into in terms of in possession. For me, that is a side of the game I think Bergvall needs to learn. However, I'm not knocking Bergvall. I think he's a fantastic talent. I really love his energy. He just wants to go and affect games. He wants to go and win games of football. He wants to be on the ball. He wants to chase the ball. I absolutely love that, and I hope the kid never, ever loses that. But in order to sort of take himself to the next level, and Frank has highlighted this in one of his own pre-match press conferences there not so long ago, that sometimes they have to tell him not to run, and that is a side of the game he needs to learn. Big up, Alex. Good to see you. Iceman says, big up, Dave, Jack, Soren, and Dermo, and everyone in the chat. Hope Frank doesn't mess around with their team too much. Next 4 games, Bodo, Leeds, Monaco, Villa needs to be 4 wins. Absolutely spot on, Iceman. If you're looking ahead with the fixtures coming up, we've got to take points out of all them for sure. Tottenham Tom says, hello, everyone. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you, Tom. Hopefully you're keeping well. Ryan Garcia is with us as well. Johnson starts. Very well. Good start tonight. Ryan says, ooh, careful with the head movement. Emily says, don't forget to like and subscribe. Grab yourself a membership and have your say on the fan show. If you want to support the guys, get your super chats in and your comments will be discussed. Come on, you Spurs. Really appreciate that, Emily. Very, very kind of you doing our job for us. Jason Bell says, big up, everyone. We also have C4. To be fair, we are playing the Europa semi-finalists. We've also got Danny Taylor in house. Big up, guys. It's about mentality tonight. It's okay turning up versus PSG, City, etc. But these are the games we need to be switched on and winning. Fingers crossed we're on it tonight. And me and Jack were I remember saying something similar to Jack there over the last couple of days as well, that these are the games that sort of frustrate me, because it's like we go out there and it's just like we go out there with piss poor attitude, piss poor mentality. And it's almost like, oh, we'll get over the line. We'll just get over the line. But when the big games come around, you expect Tottenham to let you down. They tend to not. They tend to turn up for them games. And, you need someone in the dressing room. And this is where you got to start questioning the players, because these results happen under many different managers. It's not just under one manager specifically. It's under a lot of managers. You go back to Conte, the famous game where he walked out, 3-1 up, ended up drawing 3-3 against Southampton. We always end up suffering embarrassments and stuff like that. When everyone expects Tottenham to make like worker teams, we end up faltering, and it is a mentality issue. It's very easy to get up for the big games, but what you need is someone in the dressing room making sure people realize the importance of picking up your points in these games. So when you earn your points in the big games, they're the ones that make the difference to you at the end of the season. Big up, Danny Taylor. Good to see you in the house. We've also got Darius in the house. Big up, Dave, Jack, Soren, and Dermot, and everyone else in the chat. Must win tonight. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, Darius. It's definitely a must win tonight, especially with bigger games ahead. MV Joker Davey says, I am him. Come on, you Spurs. Fly that W. Jacko will understand.
I didn't understand. Maybe I'm a little slow this morning, Eddie, but you are the man. You are the champion. I think he's potentially alluding to some pro clubs here, Dave.
He thinks he's an elite winger or something. Delusions of grandeur.
I feel like you would understand it maybe slightly more than I have, because of course I haven't laid eyes on Eddie's greatness in the pro clubs, too recently. So that's what I assume he's talking about. But I sent him a message, and I'll get back to you on what he really means.
One thing he is consistent at is giving the ball away. So fair play to you, Eddie, on that. You're definitely consistent at that for sure, my man. Nah, big up, Eddie. I love you, my man. Slid by Tubb says, big up, one and all. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you in the house. Tyler says, no excuses tonight. If we lose, it's a disgrace. Absolutely spot on. We've got Thomas back in the building as well. This is a must-win match, but we need to be at our best to win. Absolutely spot on. Jason Bell says, no excuses in not getting a win. We need to take them seriously, though. Absolutely. And then Brother Musa says, come on, you Spurs. Big up, Brother Musa. What a name. We also have Captain Pants in the house as well. He says, big up, everyone. Kois and Tony Rodriguez says, Vicario, Van de Ven, Paulinia, Danzo, Spence, Sarr, Xavi Simmons, Bentancur, Porro, Charleston, Kudos. Spurs to beat Bodo. 3-0. You want Paulinia back in at centre-back tonight, Tony. You don't want to run the risk of injury, I'm assuming, my man. And then we've got Paul Markey in the house. Good to see you, Paul Markey. How's all up in the big smoke? He says, what's not right is we don't have a striker. Perhaps Colo and Richie is not the answer. If we don't get one, we will only be an also-ran team. I mean, Look, Paul, I tried to highlight this when everyone thought it was a great idea to cash in on Harry Kane. I tried to sort of highlight this, and now people are asking Harry Kane to come back and fill the Harry Kane-sized hole, which I find ironic. However, I do agree with you. Richarlison ain't good enough. He's had more than enough time and opportunities. Solanke, in my opinion, I had question marks when we first signed him anyway. But again, I don't think he's good enough. Do I think he's slightly better than Richarlison and will help the attack out slightly better more than Richarlison? Yes, because I think his hold-up play is better. Also, with Kolo Muani, look, let's wait and see. I'm more convinced, eventually the plan would be he'll play off the left. Simmons would play as Cam, and, one of Richarlison or Solanke would play down the middle. But let's wait and see. But look, to be honest with you, I don't even see the club going and fixing this problem in January. What club is going to want to sell a goal-scoring striker, which is what we'll be in the market for in the middle of a season? They're not going to. And if they do, we certainly ain't going to pay the money that it's going to take to get them out of there. So I do think we'll probably have to wait until the summer on this one. Jack, anything you want to say to Mr. Markey here?
I mean, yeah, this is my frustration at the minute. It just feels like we do create some opportunities here and there. Some games we've created more than others, but the thing that's been consistent from last season and going into this season is that we seem to miss a lot of them. And the chances that we do take seem to come from our midfielders or our defenders are the ones that are scoring a lot of our goals, it feels like. Whereas the striker, especially in Richarlison's case, yeah, just the one thing I did give Richarlison credit for is I did feel like on his day, he is good at sniffing out opportunities and he is good at being at the right place at the right time, can win a header in the box, can be a bit of a fox in the box. But recently, I'm really questioning what he's even doing at all, to be honest. It feels like he's bringing very little to the table. So I agree with you, Paul. Usually I do. Big up, Paul.
And we will circle full back to a Richarlison conversation, towards the end of the stream, Paul Markey, because I do have one. But, to Jack's point, what is he actually offering right now? He's not pressing. Now, that's probably down to instructions that we want to sit sort of, what do they call it now, modern terms, mid-block, so, but a lot of what we praised Richarlison for was his work out of possession, and then when he's not doing that or being instructed not to do that, then you really see how much of a good player he is. You're relying on him in terms of on the ball, and I'm not being funny, but he's not providing any link-up play. He's certainly not holding up anything. He'd struggle to hold up a queue at this point, and he's not scoring goals. So what is he offering? And at some point, when does Thomas Frank just go, I'm taking you out the team and putting someone else in? At the end of the day, when this guy was being, hired, and a lot of fans were saying at the time, he finds solutions to problems. Well, right now, what I'm seeing him do is stick with Richarlison. And to a degree, I know his hands are tied. Solanke's out injured. He now has to go for surgery. Muani sort of had a dead leg. Give Hyundai Scarlett a chance instead of persisting with this guy. And that's where I'm at with it, Paul Markey. But good to see you in the house. Hopefully you're keeping well, sir. Or the other alternative, which I know Dermot's desk will probably start tilting a little bit backwards now, Johnson through the middle. I know I see a lot of fans sort of suggesting that one and putting that one on the table. Paul Markey, let me know how you feel about that suggestion. I probably already know, but, just for humor's sake, humor me, my man. King Hodler says, good afternoon. Why is the absence of Madison, Kulusevski, Solanke, Muani simply being ignored? Look at the goals and creativity there. How would Liverpool fare without Salah, Isak, Wirtz, and Ekitike? Look, 100%, I do take your point, and, we're going to have a bit of discussion around the style of playing the football in just a while, and I do think it probably will look better if you get some of these guys back. I do think that's a fair point, King Hoddle. But simply, we still need to do, we still got some decent players available. We've still got the likes of Simmons available. We've still got the likes of Kudus available. So, we still should be producing a bit better than what we are. Wilson T says, big up, guys. Good to see you, Ribsy. Hopefully you're keeping well. You and young Oliver. Also, We Are Spurs TV. Hopefully you're keeping well. 3 p.m. wherever you are. Big up, We Are Spurs TV. Steve D in the house as well. Evening, gents. Hopefully you're keeping well along with Cantab. Great to see you, Logan THFC. Cynical Dad is in the house. Big up, Kiel as well. Says, hey, guys, I see you have prepared your wine cellar. Is it for celebration or loss? I think you'll be surprised tonight on Bodo Glimt. Well, look, we're going to get into that in a minute because their CEO, whatever you want to call him, has come out and sort of made a couple of points, on why they're going to be better than what they were last year. So I'm going to put them to Jack and see what his thoughts are on them. Big up, Quincy B as well. Good to see you. Big up Kwanzaa as well. Hopefully you're keeping well. Just a harmless potato. Ian Ferguson, the multi-channel. We've also got Darren Johnson in the house. Good to see you. Lee Moody, cheer yourself up, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. We also have Adrian in the house. Big up, Adrian. And then we have this from Hull Spurs, and then we will keep cracking on. He says, evening, boys. I'm going 4-1 Spurs. Hull. Are you out near that region, sorry?
Just on the road.
Just down the road from Hull. Do you remember
Yeah,
Hull Spurs?
I used to work in Hull, so it would be interesting to maybe know him.
You might know. You might know. Well, Hull Spurs, you know, Soren's from up your way. He's one of your own here, so big up. Look, I would love to see a 4-1, but the reality is we are struggling going forward, and we've been struggling for quite some time. You know, to Jack's point earlier on, the same struggles and, you know, stuff from last season are sort of carrying over to this season, despite bringing in new signings, despite having maybe a different approach and a different way of doing things and stuff like that. It is frustrating, but I am of the opinion at some point it has to click. Kudus is too good not to. Simmons has more than enough technical ability then not to start clicking and stuff like that. So at some point it has to. Big up Hull Spurs. Really appreciate the support. But Jacko, over to you. You know, Bodo sporting director Havard Zachariasen has basically warned Spurs this isn't the same team we beat twice last season. He says they've improved physically, and also the fact that they're mid-season now. When we played them, they were out of season. Do you buy that, or is this just a classic pre-match mind games from them?
I mean, I'm not too aware of the Norwegian league transfers. It looks like they've kept the majority of their players from last season, from what I can tell, at least the good ones, like Patrick Berg, I believe, is one of them. And then, of course, you know, that guy, Petter Hauge, like you mentioned, could probably give Poro some trouble out on that left wing. They still have the same striker from last season. I think it was Dermatron or Soren that mentioned that, or at least someone did. Maybe it was someone in the chat, might have been Mark New, that said that we did technically play them without some of their key players. You know, we did benefit from that. Some of their most important players, in fact, when we played them in the semifinals. So they could be a slightly stronger outfit. When I watched the highlights of their game versus, I think it was Slavia Prague should have won that game, you know, by a lot more than, you know, than it ended up finishing out as. You know, they kind of were all over them. They created a ton of chances against Bodo, but for whatever reason, they just couldn't put them away. So maybe that gives me some encouragement that, you know, a team like Slavia Prague, if they found it pretty easy to sort of cut through them, it was at home, granted, in the first Champions League game of the season. But I don't know, like Bodo Glimt, they could be stronger than last season. But then at the same time, they struggled against the Slavia Prague team away from home. And, you know, from what I can tell, they aren't necessarily running away with the league, you know, with the Norwegian league. They have a team that's actually just ahead of them that's been giving them a lot of trouble. And there's a bit of a title race going on in Norway for all the football hipsters who might be interested. So I don't know. I mean, they could be stronger, but by the evidence from looking from the outside looking in, maybe not. You know, they're only maybe just a little bit stronger from the team we played last season because, you know, they did have a fair few of important players missing.
No, absolutely fair point. Also, you know, just on the surface today, Jack, should Spurs adapt their game to the surface or stick, you know, to our identity no matter what? Because you did bring up an interesting point in the pre-match from members sort of suggesting that we played two different styles over the two legs last year. At home, we sort of went with a more pressing, passing style, whereas away from home, we were a bit more sort of calculated in terms of, you know, going on the press, but also we played a little bit more direct on the night.
I didn't think we really pressed them that high up the pitch. If I remember, when we were away from home, I felt like we were playing a bit more direct as well. When we did win the ball back, we were looking to transition it quickly and then look to sort of go for sometimes just big balls up to the striker to sort of hold it up really. And I feel like that can work, you know, playing a bit more direct against this Bodo team. I think they struggled against it both home and away. And maybe you can't necessarily play, you know, beautiful liquid football, you know, on a pitch like this if you're not used to it, because these guys, you know, who play at Spurs, right, they're used to like almost carpets practically. Like it's just that perfect, really, where there's no bounce of the ball that goes wrong. Yet some people on the team, like Brennan Johnson, still struggle to have a good first touch from time to time. But it is usually, you know, a difficult pitch for some of these guys. I would play a bit more direct. I would be fine if Spurs maybe look to sort of sit in more of a compact mid-block type of shape that, in a way, Ange Postecoglou did against them last season. I actually thought that was maybe what was impressive about Ange, is that he really pressed them in the first game, really, you know, swarmed them. And then in the second game we played, in my opinion, people are welcome to think about it differently, but in my opinion, I thought we played actually quite differently in the second leg. And I wouldn't have any problem with that, to be honest. And Frank is more of a direct, long ball up to the striker anyway, you know, type of guy from time to time. You know, he's not one to always stay attached to the same way of
Yeah.
playing every game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's got a trick up his sleeve. He did mention in his press conference that they were working heavily on the tactics at the Tottenham Hotspur ground instead of going over to Bodo, where he said they would have been able to look at what they were doing.
No, absolutely. But I'd also flip it as well, Jack. You know, Spurs are a completely different team, you know, to what we
True.
were last year, too. You know,
True.
I think defensively we're a lot more solid, which means they probably won't get, you know, at our place, or sorry, at their place, they did create a few chances, you know, at least a few half chances. They probably won't even get that this time. You know, I think we're a lot more, you know, they talk about being a lot more physical. We're a hell of a lot more physical, you know, than what we were last year. We're a lot more taller. We look a lot more stronger, you know, and that's why we're going direct a lot of times, especially from set pieces. I think we're a lot bigger threat from set pieces as well. I think we got a load, you know, against them under Ange Postecoglou and maybe didn't, you know, utilize them to the best of our ability. So I'd also argue, I think, you know, we're a lot more compact. We're also a lot more controlled in what we're trying to do as well. Now, look, that could also make it a bit more of a cagey game, maybe, you know, a bit more sort of less entertaining. But at the end of the day, I think it'll be tougher for them. And if we can just get, this is why I keep talking about the forward line today, if we can get that clicking today, because I believe it's on them like it was against Wolves, then there's no reason why we shouldn't put these to bed, you know, handy enough tonight. But down to you, Soren. Tottenham's Champions League campaign will get progressively more difficult with bigger clashes on the horizon against the likes of PSG, Dortmund and Frankfurt to end our group stage campaign. How important is it that we take maximum points from these easier group games? You know, because for me, they could be the difference between a smooth progression or a tense couple of final match days.
Yeah, I mean, look, we know it's important to get 3 points. It's vital. It's a must. It's whatever, you know, whichever way you want to describe it. If we go there and lose and get nothing, then it does make our progression a hell of a lot harder because, you know, we have got better teams to play. And look, you know, there's all sorts of excuses as to why we shouldn't go there tonight and win. But in reality, there isn't any excuse other than ourselves. And, you know, us being typically Spursy and go to another game like we did at the weekend and not come out with 3 points like we should be doing. And look, their managers, you know, he's talking about, oh, you know, they're a better team and they're in better form and they're halfway through the season and all. We're a different team as well. We're not the same team as what played them last season. Everybody keeps telling us we're a stronger team and we're a better team and we're a better coach team. And, you know, we've got a better manager. We've got a better philosophy now. We've got rid of Daniel Levy, whatever difference that makes on the pitch, I don't know. But so, you know, there isn't an excuse to go there tonight and not win. There just isn't an excuse. And if we do come away from there with no points tonight, then I would say it's the only time this season that it's deserved to have a meltdown. Because look, the meltdown after Wolves was ridiculous. That team changed how they played. They changed the formation. They changed the philosophy. And the kind of matched us. Going there tonight, it's a different ball game. There's no excuses. There's, you know, we have to come home with 3 points, and if we don't, then it does make our progression a hell of a lot harder.
No, 100%. Like, you look what we've got coming up after this: the Slavia Prague. There's Copenhagen. You know, then the 3 games to end it is PSG, Dortmund, and Frankfurt. You know, if we don't rack up the 3 points in all these sort of games, then, you know, then you're heading into the PSG, Dortmund, Frankfurt games looking for 3 points, and we don't want to do that. You know, if we can pick all of our points up between now and then before we head into that PSG game, which is the start of the 3-game run we have at the end with all the difficult teams, it puts us inside that top 8, I would reckon, and gives us a massive chance of getting outside that top 8. It also allows us to go into them games and play a bit more pragmatic and more on the counter attack, and then have more of a chance of getting something out of the likes of PSG or Dortmund and stuff like that, rather than you know, if we had to actually go into the games looking for something, because Tottenham with pressure on them, You know, we don't usually thrive underneath it. You know, we sort of buckle underneath the pressure. So for me, it's imperative that we get the job done in these early round of fixtures, which makes these games then must-win, Dermo, right? There shouldn't be any excuses. But also, I do think Harmless Potato makes a good point. I think it's games like this one against Bodo that cause us or Frank the biggest problems. An opponent that shouldn't be underestimated, and the expectation and the pressure to win. And I think he's absolutely spot on. I think, you know, this is one of the big problems that manager faces, you know, against teams like these, sort of getting your players up for it, right? Dermo?
Thought you're talking to Soren. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, it is pressure tonight. There's pressure to win every game. We were supposed to beat Wolves on Saturday, and we didn't. It was. I don't think. Look, I think people's meltdowns come across as frustrations because we should have beaten Wolves. To be fair, there is pressure tonight to beat Bodo. We should be beating these teams. I just feel that I just feel that we've got to turn up in these games with the attitude we're going to win. We've got to turn up with the attitude that we don't fear nobody. And that too many times players turn up and say, do you know what? I don't fancy tonight for whatever reason, A, B, C, or D. That shouldn't be at the club anymore. And Thomas Frank won't allow that. That was allowed before under Ange Postecoglou. Don't worry, we're doing the league, lads. It's what we're doing the cups. Thomas Frank's attitude, I want to win everything. So tonight, the players have to turn up and play with the pressure, because that's what playing at a top club is. Every game you have to play under pressure, and if you can't stick the hot kitchen and get out of it, move on to a club where you don't have to play under pressure. Then you shouldn't be at Tottenham Hotspur. Do you know? And tonight is one of them examples. Them players have to go out on that pitch. It doesn't matter if it's AstroTurf or whatever. They got to go out and put in 100% and get a win tonight. Because you got to win your next 3 or 4 Euro Champions League games before you get to Frankfurt, Dortmund, and PSG.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to get anything out of PSG. I think we'll beat Frankfurt, by the way, because I think we beat them last season. I think we will beat them at their place again. So I think there's 3 points there. Dortmund, I'd be happy to get a point out of that. So do you know what I mean? You've got to rack up your points now. I said it earlier in my members' predicted lineup show. We've now got to rack up enough points to make sure that when we get to the last part of this qualification group in the league stages, that we've got enough points that we can qualify from top 8. Because we don't want to get into January, we might be in the League Cup semi-final, an FA Cup third round, and then you've got to play playoff rounds to get into the round of 16. That's extra games you don't need. So get the job done early, turn up and play your football and thrive off the pressure. How many players thrive off pressure? Don't let it weigh you down. Thrive off it, because you're playing for the greatest club in the world. You're playing for the best team in the land. It should be a pleasure playing for us, and that pressure should be used as a motivation instead of trying to weigh you down.
No, absolutely spot on. Absolutely spot on. So I think we all agree then on this panel, and everybody at home, there is no room for slip up. There is no error for margin. These are the games we need to stack up the points. You know, when them fixtures came out, we said, you know, we need to stack up the points early, which makes them games towards the end of the campaign a lot easier. So we need to stack them up tonight. I don't want to hear any excuses if teams don't, if we're not on the right side. Anything but a win, you know, out of tonight for me sort of spells a little bit of disaster or trouble on the horizon, you know, in terms of the Champions League campaign. I don't know, maybe after the game, if we did get a result or maybe a draw, something like that, or just a draw, people would probably go, it's not the worst result in the world. But then when you come round to PSG, Dortmund and Frankfurt, and if you don't win, if you lose 2 or 3 of them games, all of a sudden you're in a precarious position, and that's where the trouble comes in. So there's no excuses tonight. But Jack, you know, to I think Minchy's point there, you know, maybe are we getting ahead of ourselves? I think you sort of said it a couple of weeks ago that, you know, Frank, you know, it's been maybe testament to the job that Frank has done, you know, in terms of making us more solid. You know, we're sort of competing in games better than what we were last year. And, you know, it sort of brought some expectations. You know, I think, you know, at the minute, a lot of Spurs fans are expecting to run before we can walk. So, but let's be real. I mean, that Wolves game at the weekend was disappointing. Frank said we lost structure and coolness. Do you see that as just a blip, or was that performance a reminder that Spurs still have some major growing pains to sort out?
I think that was still a reminder that it is a work in progress. Losing to, well, it felt like a loss. I know we didn't lose, but it did feel like a loss to Wolves. And it was also a reminder that there's still areas that I think we still need to massively improve on. Like, I think, going forward, we still have some question marks. Yes, we can score goals from set pieces. We can score goals through the midfield. Defenders can pop up with one, but I still have serious concerns about the forward line at the minute when it comes to being able to create chances on both sides of the pitch. It feels like Kudus sometimes is the only one that's really trying to actually create things for others, but then that can make it pretty easy to defend, pretty easy to predict, how a team like Spurs can create if only one guy on the wings is doing it. I have question marks about the strikers at the moment. And then at the left wing, like I think Xavi Simons has had one or two good games, but then against Wolves, of all teams, I thought he really struggled on the night. Maybe it was just a bad night for him, but he really, in my opinion, didn't offer a whole lot and was just getting some of the basics, felt like wrong. And you could say that was probably the case in the Villarreal game, as well as another game that I'm trying to remember, but, maybe just doesn't come to mind at the minute. But there have been some games that we've seen that I think were kind of the case last season as well under Ange, where like, we're just talking about like simple sort of just 3-pass combinations where like, can just 3 guys in a row have a good first touch, make a good decision, be able to play, a decent pass to break the lines. Like, we're talking about some of the basics of football that Spurs at the minute, especially when it gets into the forward line, are really struggling with. So I think that was the Wolves game was a reminder of that Spurs going forward are still kind of dreadful to watch. Some of it might have to do with the tactics from Frank. I think most of it really just has to do with the players, because that opening 20 minutes, like we were just watching Xavi Simons like balloon it in front of him, multiple times. He was hitting it out of play. We've seen this from Brennan Johnson. We've seen this from other players where they're just struggling to do the very basics of the game. And if that's happening, there's not really then a huge expectation that we're going to be able to create a lot on the day. Like, you still have to be good enough to have a good first touch, make a good decision, create that bit of space. And Spurs are struggling to do that in certain games. And that was the case last season, I felt like, as well. But the one benefit is if you are defensively solid, no matter how dreadful you're playing, you're technically still in it. You're technically still capable of coming out with some points. So that's the relief, at least.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think we're still seeing the same teething problems in the forward line. I think, the assumption was from many that Frank's this great coach. He's going to coach all these guys to be better. I heard it. He's going to turn Matisse Tell into this. He didn't even pick Matisse Tell for the Champions League squad. He's going to turn this player into that. Coaching. And something that I've always tried to hammer home. Everyone that's come into the job, all have done their coaching badges. They all know how to coach. Everyone has different methods. Some are more methodical on the training pitch. Some rely more on man management. Some are more tacticians. There's different methods of it, but they can all coach. And hopefully Spurs fans have realized that sometimes it is more on the players, because I do think we sort of, make an excuse culture towards our players at Tottenham Hotspur, and we sort of blame everything on the manager, but Thomas Frank isn't asking the player when the ball is just passed into you along the ground to chip it up in the air 20 yards and just make it more difficult for yourself. He's not telling you when you've got a guy in a white shirt 10 yards away to put it out into the stands or put it to the right or the left of them. These aren't things that Thomas Frank are telling them, and these are things that were repetitive last season and the season before under Ange Postecoglou. And for me, the big difference is the quality in player. Before this problem started arising, we had Kane and Son in their pomp, in their prime, ripping teams apart. I think we sort of got over complacent on how good they were at the basics. When we were selling Harry Kane, discussions were even coming around. He's too old. He's slowing down. He's not doing this. He's not doing that. But I think one thing people didn't take into account is how easy they made football look, because they executed the basics all the time. Since then, we've invested well over 200 million right across that forward line, and we're no better. We have a huge problem. And for me, I sort of worry because we haven't really gone into the market after a real sort of player of a real experience that's been out there and done it like we did with Paulini, and look at the difference that's made in the midfield. We haven't really gone and got that signing in the forward line. We've gone and got a load of players that have a lot of potential, but we don't actually have that finished article. Even Kudus, he's a lot of potential, but he needs to add goals to his game to become that finished article. For years, we had 2 players that were the finished article, and it doesn't matter who played on the right-hand side. They made them look competent because of how good they were. But right now, we are struggling, and it is down to a lot of the quality of the players that we've brought in here. And SOF makes a point here, he says, which I'm going to disagree with, by the way. He says Frank has a more difficult task getting goals with this team than Ange had. He lost Kane, but still had Son. Kulu had adapted to the Premier League, and he added Maddison, who had Champions League experience. I disagree with you. Yeah, Kulusevski was out injured for large parts of last season. Maddison, was in and out of the team for large parts of last season. And at the end of the day, he missed Harry Kane, the club's all-time record goal scorer. Since Frank's come in, don't forget we spent money on Kudos, we spent money on Simmons, we brought in Kolo Muani. When Ange Postecoglou had the problem, they went and got Timo Werner on loan. So I would argue, I think Frank has had more money thrown at, and he has a better opportunity in fixing the problem than what Ange Postecoglou did. I tried to highlight under Ange Postecoglou the limitations of Brennan Johnson, the limitations of Tell, the limitations of, Udabur and stuff like that these players are raw. They're, because I had to even try to tell all the Ange fans that, over the summer when I was trying to highlight it all, they all turned on me. Dave, you don't know what you're talking about. Just trust Ange. He's the Messiah. Managers ain't messiahs. They rely on quality, the quality of players, players to be able to have a bit of football IQ, just execute the basics. Just go out there and do your job. I'd argue Frank's got some players there, and the other players that maybe he wants to use probably are out injured. But I also would argue I don't think he's making the best of it. People say he's a great coach. I'm not being funny, but I don't see any patterns of play that forward line's trying to do to break open teams. I don't see any specific areas that's being targeted to get at teams, going forward and stuff like that. We sort of just keep going through the same mundane thing, pass it around, try and put crosses in the box, stuff like that. But it's nowhere near good enough. So I don't think there's been great coaching going on in that forward line either. Maybe that's an element that Frank is going to start bringing in. I know he mentioned that him and Jason Cochran, are getting to that point where they are starting to work on it. I think first and foremost, he probably did have to come in here and put the defensive foundations in place, make sure that midfield was solid as well. Now the last part is to work on going forward, but it's not going to be an overnight fix. And I think it's only going to get better when players come back from injury. And even still then, it's still not going to be the greatest in my opinion. But I think, the Wolves game, I think the Bournemouth game, I think how lackluster we were against Villarreal, going 2 down to Brighton before salvaging a point. I think they're all warning signs that, despite getting off to a decent start and putting points on the board, there's still a lot of growing pains to sort out. And I would argue the start of our campaign has been very, very easy to us compared to the start of other teams' campaigns, which is, I think, is slightly, in terms of stats anyway, is maybe making us look a little bit better. However, I do expect the performance, a reaction from that Wolves game tonight. I don't want to see any nerves. I want to see them go out there and just rip this Bodo team apart. And look, guys, I really like Thomas Frank, but a lot of the football and style of play under him so far has been horrible to watch. It's been boring. It's not been any better than Postecoglou ball. Should we be concerned, or does it just require patience and time, or does Frank just simply not have the players to do so, to play a better style of football? There's a lot of different avenues can go down. I want everyone sort of to have their say on this, and I also want you guys at home to have your say on this, because don't get me wrong, this isn't me having a pop at Thomas Frank, but at Spurs, and I already see it now after the Wolves game, fans are starting to turn on Thomas Frank. And whether we agree, whether we can sit here and say it's just about winning games, style of football doesn't matter, it does. We've won games already this season, but we're not winning it in a manner that Spurs fans expect of their team. So I do think, we have to get that forward line going, because it's also creating other stupid debates, which we're going to get into in terms of further back in the midfield and stuff like that. But Soren, we'll start with you. What do you think is the problem right now? Because I think most people agree with me. Yes, we're putting points on the board, but we're not good to watch.
We're having this discussion with a few friends the other day, and the only thing I can kind of say is that when you watch the football now, it's like going back to watching it under Conte. And that, to me, was the start of the massive toxicity within Tottenham Hotspur fans. And people, I was on plenty of shows, yourselves and Sean's and Savas, and a lot of people were moaning about, yes, we were getting a win, but it was so boring. The football was absolutely crap. And then we got Ange Postecoglou in, which kind of went totally opposite. And the football, for me, was more exciting. but it was so unpredictable. You didn't know whether you were going to win. You didn't know whether. Well, you knew you were either going to win or lose, and unfortunately, we lost more than we really won. But
Yeah,
I don't know. The football to me was kind of, you wanted to watch it because you just didn't know what you were going to see. Whereas under Thomas Frank, and this is in no way having a go at Thomas Frank because he's so new to his tenure. We've got to give him time, but I think he's doing the sensible thing. He's making us hard to play against. He's making us hard to beat. And you just hope the football will progress into some sort of attacking style as well. Now,
I agree.
at the end of a
What
game,
about Cantab's point here, just quickly, where he says our numbers are better than our performances? I prefer it this way around.
well, you could argue the fact of our numbers were better under Ange than our performances suggested because we were losing, but we were controlling games in a sense. You know, we were losing through stupid mistakes all the time or lack of, injuries or the main players out. But under Thomas Frank, I think it's, at the moment, you watch it kind of thinking you're not going to lose, but you also don't necessarily believe that much that you're going to win because you just think we're doing to teams what they did to us under Ange. We're stifling the game. We're making it hard to score against us. But there is, you just see the ball going from left to right to left to right to left to right. Eventually, what I hope under Thomas Frank is that we then progress into an attacking team as well. And I kind of think at this particular time, I have more faith in Thomas Frank keeping us up the league than I did with Ange, but I have more faith in Ange winning us a trophy than I do in Thomas Frank, if that makes any sense whatsoever. And I just think it's far too early to start criticising Frank too much because he's had to come in, he's had to stabilise a team that was losing far too many games last season, and he's made us harder to beat. He just hasn't made us better at beating other teams, and I hope that will come. And that's all we can kind of look forward to. That he seems to be a coach that is doing things the right way rather than the wrong way. And I mean, on paper, he's probably got a better squad than Ange had. And yes, one of the questions earlier was why aren't we talking about the injuries? Well, we weren't allowed to use the injuries last season as an excuse, so why can we use it this season? That's my answer. But yeah, I mean, look, it's early. In Thomas Frank, we've got to trust. We've got to stay behind the team. He's only been here for a couple of months, so I just don't understand the negativity behind wanting Frank out already or whatever. And
no, I don't see so much.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about with
no,
a
I'm not
fans.
saying me, but what I'm seeing out there in general isn't exactly Frank out. It's more so. Now, I don't know how much half of it is maybe a lot of the old Ange Postecoglou fans maybe being a little bit bitter. I'm not sure. I don't know. But, when we do the Twitter reacts, we are starting to see a lot more fans in general, Jack, I would say. Am I correct? Asking more questions of Frank and, maybe asking the same questions of how he used his bench, for instance, against Wolves the other day. I'm starting to maybe argue that I think doing so much rotation early on in the season, I think it's hindered us against Wolves. I think he picked the wrong team to start against Brighton. I think it's costing us points. And in general, we do see a lot more fans sort of bemoaning the style of play, especially when you go into games like Bournemouth where you expect us to rack up a few goals. Games like Wolves where you expect us to rack up few goals, Villarreal at home, and it just doesn't happen. With each game, it's not happening. More and more fans are sort of starting to express their frustration for how we're playing.
I don't think it's the fans of Ange that are the ones moaning now. I think it's the ones that were moaning last season are still moaning this season. It's the same people that weren't happy last season or the season before or the season before or the season before or the season before that aren't still happy now. It's to me, I mean, I was an Ange fan at the time, and I've moved on. He's a previous manager. He has no loyalty to me now. I have no loyalty to him. But I speak to a lot of people that were happy to keep Ange on as the manager this season, but are very behind Thomas Frank. And I don't think it's the Ange supporters from last season that are being negative towards Frank. I think it's the same negative people that are continuing to be negative towards Frank. And look, their argument is they want a better Tottenham. Fair enough. And I get that. But with that, you've got to be patient still. We can't expect Thomas Frank to be coming in and ripping everything up and then winning everything all the time. It will take time. And for those that are moaning, I mean, look, everybody's got the right to moan about a performance on the day. And I get that, the Wolves game wasn't great. I don't think it was as bad as people made out, but that's just my perspective.
Fair.
But
I'm not even going to argue that one today.
No, and I get that, I mean, I watch football for an entertainment thing. It doesn't run my life. And I'm at an age now where there are far more important things. Time's running out for people like me. We're getting on. And
I feel it.
A loss on a Saturday is devastating. Don't get me wrong. It kills the whole weekend and it kills the week. But it's not the disaster it is for some people. And I understand that. When I was younger, that's how I was. But for those that are moaning against Thomas Frank and think he's not up to the job, then my argument to them is I would love to see you do better.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. Just quickly, I'm going to come straight back to Referrer's comment here. I just want to explain myself here. Regards, Daniel Coy says he's had 9 games, for fuck's sake. Is this for real or is it just a narrative to gain clicks? I reckon the latter. I mean, considering Thomas Frank is out there, which I was going to make a point of in the press conference, recognizing we haven't been playing well, that we must do a lot better going forward, that we must dominate more games at home. I mean, it's not really a narrative that's being made up, is it? Especially when Spurs fans are also out there saying it on their socials and stuff like that. At the end of the day, these channels are here to have these discussions. So these discussions we're going to have. None of us are sitting here saying we agree with the narrative. It's just narrative that I've seen, that I'm putting out there and seeing what people's perspective is. So put yours in, but don't start sitting here, coming in here saying it's for clicks and stuff like that. When the manager's out there recognizing in all his interviews himself, sort of saying the exact same thing. And it's not negative. He's saying it himself. At the end of the day, it's okay to realize this club isn't perfect. We're not perfect on the football pitch, and there's areas that need improvement. It's okay to sort of talk about these things. We shouldn't shy away from them. How do you ever expect to be better or improve if you're just going to gloss over and pretend everything's perfect? So I think that's a bit of an unfair narrative on your regards coming in here, maybe only hearing half of the conversation. But like I was going to say, I think it is a good thing that Frank is out there recognizing these problems. It's a bit different to Ange Postecoglou, where sort of he glossed over a lot of the problems, right? He didn't really want to answer the questions. And the more they asked him, the more sort of irate he was getting with them, and the more sort of stubborn he was in not answering them. How many times did they go at him about the set pieces? It's sort of like we've bigger things to worry about than set pieces. And it's like, and this is one thing I never agreed with him on. It's like, well, defending set pieces is basics. You should be working on that. And also attacking set pieces. It's an avenue in scoring goals. And if you're a great attacking manager, you should view it as such. So it's sort of like I disagreed on that. And you already seen the stability around it and already some of the goals we've scored from it, with Thomas Frank coming in. So, I mean, it's good that Frank is actually out there recognizing that there's problems. He's not hiding it. I think if he wasn't acknowledging it and sort of taking the Ange approach to it, I think you would see a lot more fans turning a lot more quickly already, in my opinion. Dermo's gone, so we'll go to you, Jack, and we'll come back down to Dermo. I mean, look, I do think it's a number of reasons. I think there is an element where, of course, we have to be patient, Jack. Rome wasn't built in a day. But also, I would say, does he have the right combination of players available? I don't think so. I think it is also a player issue in that regard. But I also don't think he's helping himself by constantly rotating that forward line. How are you ever supposed to build combinations and stuff if you keep making rotations? But we'll take Referrer's super chat here, and then we'll get Jack's thoughts on it and Dermo's thoughts on it. He says, Thomas Frank is not on social media. That's clever. He gets evaluated impatiently every week. What do you think he means by the second part, Jack? I do agree with him on the first part. The fact he's not on social means he can just concentrate on his job to a large degree.
I mean, I think fans, to Reefer's point, I think fans probably to a degree are using a pretty small sample size of games and then making some big conclusions, which is what fans do. I don't really blame fans or people. If you talk about football and you enjoy talking about football, you're going to use what you've seen, to make arguments and make opinions on it. I think we all would probably agree, though, that maybe we still need plenty more games to start really feeling more confident in, some of the conclusions that we're taking from it all. I would say that the things fans can criticize Frank for has been, some of the rotations or substitutions, plenty of these things like you can nitpick. And I think you're totally entitled to, as a fan. When it comes to like your question about style of play, it's been boring, that type of thing. I would
Suppose
say
you don't
there's,
have too many complaints. You like this style, right?
well, you cut me off at any point because I'll probably
Sorry.
have too much of a rant. No, I was going to say, please cut me off because, I might have too much of a rant about it. I might start not making sense, but I think there have been some games where we played brilliantly, and I feel like we're still forgetting that. Like PSG, like the way we dominated PSG, I thought that was a wonderful performance. Yes, we didn't have the ball for large periods, but we were defensively compact. We transitioned quickly, and I thought we were a really excellent team on the day. Against Man City, absolutely bossed them around the park as well. And I thought against West Ham, the first half, I think we were all over them in the pretty much after the 20th minute, and it was only eventually we were going to just score some way, somehow against that side. So I think there have been some good performances, with, in my opinion, a pretty pleasing style of play. Just my thing on like, oh, has it been drab to watch? You sort of look at it now, though, like the majority of successful managers aren't necessarily playing like a really eccentric, beautiful style of play like Forest last season with Nuno. I mean, that Forest team, they were one of the more boring sides to watch, in the Premier League, but they were extremely effective. Oliver Glasner with Crystal Palace right now, they are not necessarily a fun team to watch, but they are extremely effective at what they do. You even look at, Marco Silva at Fulham. He's been able to keep Fulham in the Premier League for multiple seasons, playing a style of play that I would say is not necessarily that impressive to watch. Even Scott Parker right now is trying to at least employ more of a defensive style of football, because last time he came to the Premier League, he tried to sort of play this beautiful attack-minded brand of football, and he got absolutely destroyed. Same thing is happening to Russell Martin, right? Russell Martin is like trying to play this beautiful brand of football, but it's just getting pumped, week in, week out. You look at it like it seems like if you want to get results, in my opinion, because I'm more of a results guy, I think you have to have more of a defensive minded approach. And then with that, you're conceding that you might not really be that pleasing on the eye, but you guarantee that you'll get more points and more results. And that's just how I live. I totally accept that people want to see beautiful attack minded football. I totally get that. I honestly, for the bang for your buck, totally could see why you feel that way. I care more about results. And when you look at some of the most successful managers in history, a lot of them didn't really play, let's say attack minded, beautiful style of play. Antonio Conte won the Serie A with a bang average Napoli team playing a pretty drab, defensive, boring football. Jose Mourinho has never really played that exciting or beautiful brand of football. Even Carlo Ancelotti has never played that exciting or beautiful brand of football. There are very few managers apart from Pep Guardiola, maybe like Hansi Flick, at the moment, and to a degree Jurgen Klopp, that, play a really exciting brand of football and then also win a lot of games at the same time. I think Thomas Frank is one of those very clever managers who has found a way to score a lot of goals in the Premier League while being defensively solid. But the actual style of play is not that exciting at times. It's just extremely effective. And that's what I care about.
Yeah.
Just to quickly jump in here, Dave.
Yeah.
Totally agree with Jack. Absolutely spot on. And the important thing that we've got to remember is at the end of the season, if we win something playing this style, nobody will give a shit how we played all season.
Fair. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've won so much. That's
where
Jack is. Yeah, that's where Jack is spot on.
I say the same about the Europa League. It's like when I'm sitting there in 30 years' time, on my deathbed, reminiscing on my memories. So I'm just going to think of the Europa League, the parade and the day out and everything else, celebrating with all you guys and, celebrating with my father and stuff like that. I'm not going to remember how the Premier League season went and all that. I sort of do agree with you on that one. And I do agree with Jack. Look, don't get me wrong. I think there's a happy medium. I think, with Jurgen Klopp and Hansi Flick, they can play a certain way because some of the best squads in the world available to them. There's two ways of playing. If you've got like great players, you can dominate possession, which can look attack minded, but there are more than one way to skin a cat is the phrase, and I think Thomas Frank, at Brentford, I think, when you looked at his side, it sort of gave you that happy medium, right? He had that defensive structure, but they did score goals and they were exciting on the sort of break or going forward. Maybe just a quick follow-up question, Jack, and then I've got a lot of listeners' comments I want to read out, and then we're going to get Darmo's opinion. Why do you think he's maybe struggling to replicate then that attacking, now that he had at Brentford, sort of at Tottenham Hotspur then, because look, I would argue maybe it's down to some quality of player. Like, let's not forget when they had Tony, Spurs fans wanted Tony to replace Kane. They also wanted Wisa in here. They also wanted Mbuemo in here. And a lot of fans wanted their whole front line in here. Is it a player issue? Whereas is he just not adapting, that Spurs fans maybe are expecting maybe a bit more of a on the front foot approach at times and maybe struggling to adapt to that?
I think it's more of a player issue. Like, I don't think Thomas Frank was doing anything that revolutionary going forward. I think he has shown that he can build a really strong defensive team in the midfield and in the back line. They can be really compact, really difficult to break down. I remember so many times when we even played Brentford as Spurs fans, it was always really tough to sort of get through them and sort of break them down. And I think that's Frank's superpower. I think he can make teams really defensively solid. When it comes to going forward, I think he did rely on quality players because there's usually a lot of space in behind. He obviously, figured out ways to hurt teams with set pieces and, with various other things from throw-ins. But it felt like he took advantage of, we're going to sit compact and then we're going to hurt teams on the break and in transition. And in order to do that, you need really quality players that can take advantage of that space. And I think so. It was a bit sort of on him relying on having good quality players going forward. Like when you think about it, right? He's had amazing players that would, for many of years, walked into the Spurs front line. Like he had Ollie Watkins when he was coming up. Ollie Watkins maybe is undergoing a little bit of a bad spell, but plenty of times it's been a great striker in the Premier League. Ivan Toney is one of the better strikers we've seen in the Premier League of recent. You've looked at Brian Mbumo. Everybody would have taken Brian Mbumo going into this team. Most people would take Yohan Wissa. He's had good players, going forward. So I think it's been more, he's relied on having quality players in the forward areas. I don't know it was necessarily, maybe he did a little bit to sort of improve their game here and there, but I think he brought out, the best of their qualities in transition. And then I think his superpower for me is defensive minded approach and being solid defensively. I think that's where he really excels. I don't think he's an excellent tactician at, playing attack-minded football, but he's had brilliant players, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think he needs better players in the forward line, to be honest, or players just need to start playing better. Like example, Xavi Simons, or even though Xavi Simons will give him time to settle into the Premier League, but at some point he really has to start running the show. And same thing should be said of the Yoda Bears, the Tells, the Brennan Johnsons, and the Richarlisons. Like they need to step up because I do feel like there's only so much he can do, and they're getting some of the basics completely wrong.
Off the back of what you're saying, I've 2 points to sort of make. I think, obviously, he hasn't been helped by missing James Maddison. He'd be perfect in that number 10 role. He hasn't been helped by Kulusevski, who I think would solve that left wing problem.
No Colomwani.
He hasn't, no Colomwani or Solanke, which I do think would make us look better going forward. To be honest with you, I understand the frustration from fans, but it's something I tried to point out last year. And because of everyone's hatred for Ange Postecoglou, which I understand, the rebuttal always was, well, he's just got to do better. He's got to do better. He's got to be coaching them this, that, and the other. But I think we'll see with Thomas Frank. Why were people expecting Johnson to come back a new player and start doing stuff he couldn't do in previous years? Same with Richarlison, same with Udebur, same with Matisse Tell. These players just are not good enough. And these are the bulk of the guys that he has to try and use across this forward line until the injured players come back. So I don't think he's helped by them. But also I would add, and I think this is a fair comment to make by Romeo. I know he's pissing a lot of people off at the start, but he says, it's boring bashing Richie when Frank don't have tactics to get us into scoring positions. And I do think there is an element that he's still trying to work a way around that. I do think that's an element that he has to adapt, at Tottenham Hotspur. I said it when we first signed Thomas Frank that I thought, I have no doubt he's going to come in and make us defensively solid without even having to buy defenders, because I always said I think the talent is there to have her. I think we've got one of the best back lines in the Premier League in terms of individuals to pick from and right across that back four. So I've always said that was there, and I always agreed that he would come in and make us defensively solid. If anyone goes back to the video I made, I also said from set pieces defensively and going forward, we're going to be solid. Defensively, we'll concede less goals, which means it'll help us get more points on the board, but also going forward from set pieces, we'll score more goals, which will also help put more points on the board, which I said ultimately will give Frank a bit more leeway with Tottenham fans and maybe a bit longer to work in the job and solve the problems that maybe other managers haven't had time to work with. But I've always maintained I worry because at Brentford, his team had one of the lowest possession stats in the league. That was never going to fly at Tottenham Hotspur. And I always said that was something he's going to have to adapt. Now, don't get me wrong. We do see a fair amount of possession in games. I'm okay with that. But where I think Frank is struggling to adapt in terms of maybe coaching is in that forward area, because I think he's also learning at this moment in time what's the best method going forward. And I think he's trialing and erroring a few things right now. And I think he's sort of learning on the job as he goes along. However, because he's brought in that defensive structure, which keeps us in games, to your point you made earlier, Jack, it's going to give him longer to try and find the right solution. But also, I don't think the right solutions are going to come around until he has the players back available that can actually carry out the instructions that he's asking them to carry out. So I think it's one of them where he's just going to require a bit of patience from Tottenham fans, unfortunately, which is hard considering we were spoilt with Kane and Son in years gone by. But it is what it is at this moment. Yeah, I think it is.
I think it is a hangover still from that. No, to say Richarlison hasn't had chances though in recent games, I think is a little bit laughable. Like against Brighton, he had almost 2 1-on-1s with the goalkeeper that he just didn't take advantage of, that he just fired straight into the goalkeeper. And then against Villarreal, and as well as I feel like against Wolves, there were plenty of good crosses into the box that he was just for some reason couldn't get to them, or was too late to get to them, or just wasn't jumping at all. So I would say the guy has had chances in recent games. You know, he's just not putting them away, which is my frustration with Richarlison. I'm even wearing a Richie jersey right now. So this is coming from a guy who actually likes Richarlison, but I think he's been pretty dreadful in recent games.
Yes, he's been absolutely.
That's just me, though.
Yeah. We are going to get Dermot's thoughts in, but I have a load of comments started dating back from quite a while, so I just want to get them read. Dermot will come back to you. Big up, Fresher. Refer. Really appreciate the support, and I think it is good that Frank. Do you know what? One thing I do like about Frank is his interviews. Actually, Jack knows me in years gone by. I've hated watching press conferences. I'll just go and get the transcript. However, actually quite find Thomas Frank honest and quite endearing, and I can listen to that. So, you know, he has sort of changed my opinions on in terms of how he comes across and stuff. We've got Kiel says, I remember the previous match, Bodo Spurs. Bodo was not prepared for Spurs being so defensive. It would be interesting to see how they behave tonight. The ball is going much faster on their grass. Daniel Harris says, big up Team Harris checking in. I'm expecting a boring 2-0 win. We aren't pretty, but we get the job done away under Frank. Fair point. Faz Radfar says, big up to my favorite channel. Good to see you, Faz. We've also got Skeletor in the house. Let's pump those plastic pigs merchants. 5-0 tonight. Good to see you. Daniel also says, let's not do this. We were crying out for the defensive solidity. Frank has been 3 months. Here 3 months. Fair point, Daniel. But I've also been crying out for, you know, a much better forward line for quite some time as well, plus the defensive solidity and midfield solidity, which in fairness, Frank has bought by just bringing in Pauline. It's amazing how much one player of a certain profile, a certain experience, and certain quality and a certain level can really sort of transform a department in your team. Jason Bell says, give Frank a bit of time. It was rough for a bit when he took over Brentford, and it took a bit once he got them to the Prem. Plus, we really do lack quality in our attack. We've got Slow Jamrod says, good afternoon, Dave, Jack, and panel. I'll take any type of win tonight. Come on, you Spurs.
That's
DB
me every
says,
game.
evening all. Hope you are well, Dermo. Mick Hermlock says, good evening, Jack and Dave and Co. We've got Rain. He says, it's not negative to say we have problems that need to be fixed. Frank's just saying it himself. Absolutely spot on. Paddy Harnett says you have to look at the squad he has and the way they have played the past 18 months with Ange. So this will take time to adjust. Tanner Webster says Frank is the right man. Timothy Whitaker says, like Dave said, we went from having 2 strikers that could play for any team of the world to 5 who wouldn't really get into a top half team. I'd also argue I don't think any of the relegation clubs would take them off us to improve their fortunes. Banjo says never replaced Bale, Kane's son, nor a whole bunch of others with equals. Stevie D says I was behind Ange till maybe 2 months before the end of the season. It just wore me out being miserable watching a loss more often than not. Frank is getting the basics right first and is doing a good job in my opinion.
Big up, Steve.
And we've also got K32 says hello Dave, Jack and everyone, expecting a very tough game tonight, but it's a game we have to win because games will be tougher. Absolutely spot on. Solanke out now after up is a big blow. Moani still unfit is annoying, very annoying given that you know, I think he missed 1 or 2 games in his professional career due to injury, and he's already, you know, missed that at Spurs. DB says this channel does not do things for clicks, but the Angelotti last year was endless. I get what you're saying, DB, But I would argue in the end, I was sort of proven right. He did win the Europa League, and I always maintained if this guy gets us to a final, he will win it. That's one thing I've always said with Ange Postecoglou. I said maybe in terms of over the season, maybe not the right guy, but in terms of getting us into a final and winning it, thought he was the right guy. So I think 50-50 split on that one, DB. What do you think, my man? Let me know.
He agreed with my rant, so I appreciate you, DB. You supported my rant from earlier. Appreciate
got
you.
a couple more comments as well.
Just quickly, Dave, the interesting thing with that last comment, how many people would give up winning the Europa Cup for a little bit more consistent season?
Not many. I wouldn't give it up
many,
anyway,
exactly.
that's for sure. Lazy 8 says, I think Frank's rotation has been admirable and necessary despite these players' shortcomings. That they have to be integrated and available. The short-term sacrifice will play long-term dividends. So Nick is playing the long game on that. Big up, Nick. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself at the weekend with the family time, my man. Nick from Venn says he's brought a bit of stability. Will always find complaints, but he needs time and personnel. Still no left wing, Anne, etc. Foggy Form says, big up, guys. Been a long time. Hope all is well. Come on, you Spurs. That's what we need. The attack to kick in and up the numbers. Absolutely spot on, Foggy Form. I think that looking at the sort of what we're watching, it's the only part that's really missing. You know, it really is. It's that forward line. I think that forward line just even becomes 20% better. I think it becomes, you know, much more bearable, a bit more exciting to watch. And I think fans, you know, will stop moaning in general. Big up, Foggy Form. Good to see you, Jack. And he's also sent in a super sticker. Where have you been, though, Foggy? Let me know. How's life been treating you?
Big up to Foggy. And then the super sticker is just a thumbs up from Foggy Foam. So appreciate you, sir. Very, very, very kind of you.
Very kind.
And hopefully you're keeping well, sir. It's good to have you back with us. One of the best names as well in the members community. Big up to you, sir.
Hopefully there'll be no foam off that sea tonight out in the Arctic Circle, my man. Good to see you. Got less snow in the afternoon, Jack and Dave. Can't wait for this game. And then Ollie Pasco says it's a process, I believe, far more in the coaching staff. Then we have their track record and how the team is being built with transfers. Thomas Frank has said phase 1 at the moment, then progression with phase 2 and 3. Fair point. I mean, I know a certain manager down the road that gets ripped apart about talking about phases and, you know, it's stuff like that. But look, I'm not going to go down there. But Dermo, let's get your thoughts on it. You've been very patient with me. Really appreciate it. By the way, Paul Markey, I will come back to this. And Brian Dempsey. I just don't want to keep Dermot sitting here for an hour without
speaking. If you want to do them first, Dave, do them first.
All right, okay, I'll come to these first and then I'll come back to you. Really, it's very, very nicely, Dermo. Paul Markey says, guys, remember Frank said 3 phases. What's the first one?
3 phases, realizing or
resilience. I don't know.
Resilience, yeah. Defense, midfielders, and forward line. Commentated last weekend, 1 done, 2 near next is the forward line. I just think maybe if I'm understanding Paul Markey correctly, and this is what I have appreciated about Frank, is I think he's immediately looked at the last few seasons under Spurs who've conceded like 60 plus goals. Even under Antonio Conte, we conceded like 60 plus goals in a season. So I think he's looking at it where I need to figure out how to instill a defensive core and sort of that belief that we aren't going to be a team that's going to let in goals left and right. You know, it seemed like it became sort of the status quo at Spurs where we were happy to score goals, but we didn't seem to care about conceding any. And he's kind of fixed that with some of those training drills that we saw over the summer. They're putting in, you know, big blocks. They're sort of working harder for each other, helping out the fullbacks, that type of thing. So I think he's looked to build a strong core and a strong belief in the principles of defending. And then we're hoping to see in the next months or so more of a cohesive idea of what we're doing going forward.
I think he's absolutely spot on doing it that way. I think it's going to buy him time. I think 2 reasons why. You get into the habit of keeping clean sheets, even when you don't play well. You go and you get stuff out. You get points, right? But also, and you get points. You know, it stops tons from wagging, right? Which keeps you in a job longer at the end of the day. Also, second of all, we're not the most creative side. We're not a team that we're in a position to be able to go and try and outscore teams. We're just not. So at the end of the day, you know, the defensive solidity has to come first. If we can only manage 1 or 2 goals a game, you know, or a lot of games we look lackluster, don't create an awful lot, then, you know, at the end of the day, we can't be conceding the amount of rated goals we have in seasons gone by. So, you know, I think by doing that, it does give Frank a chance to actually get his feet in the door and actually sort out Tottenham's problems long term. And I think you're absolutely spot on that, Paul Markey. Just the attack sort of to come next. And look, like I said, in fairness, I think Frank said a while ago, didn't he, in one of his press conferences, that him and Jason, you know, Cochrane have sort of been working on that recently, which is a good thing. I like the way that Frank doesn't hide away from the problems. He sort of realizes they're there, but then also comes out and says, we are sort of in the process of trying to work on it, and this is what we're doing, which is a good thing. And then Brian Dempsey, member for 37 months, says, all right, Dave, Jack, and panel, missed you guys, took a bit of time away from the footy madness. Now I'm back and hungrier than ever into this shite. Come on, you Spurs. Do you know what, Brian? You're not the only one. Look, there are so many people off the back of last season. You know, we had so much, it was such an emotional roller coaster. There was never a period last season where anyone was sort of middle of the road in terms of emotions. It was angry most weekends, and then that huge high and that elation right at the end of the season. I mean, it's enough to sort of drag anyone down, you know, sort of leave you feeling emotionless, you know, and questioning your life and your life choices and everything else. You know, that will do that to you, being on such a high and such a low. But it's good to see that people are starting to get the bug back. You're not the only one. There's loads of people sort of just returning slowly at their own pace. I even had to do it. I remember saying to everybody, it's got that much to me this year. I'm going away with my Aulad for you know, a couple of weeks. You know, I'm just getting away from everything, chilling out, not doing a thing, you know, and stuff like that. Which in the end, you know, comes what ended up happening over the summer. I'm sort of glad I ended up taking that time to go and celebrate with him and that in the end. But you know, you don't need to explain yourself to me, my man. But look, we're back, baby. Big up, Brian Dempsey. Good to see you in the house, and really appreciate the support as well. Paul Markey and Foggy Form. Big up, guys. Dermo, just looking at the chat, I think the consensus is A, we don't quite have the right personnel right now to sort of look pretty on the eye, and also B, patience and time is what it's going to take. And, you know, judging by the chat here, that's the general consensus coming out of it. Do you agree, or do you put the problems on Thomas Frank?
I don't. I said it Saturday after the Wolves game. Maybe we need a bit of boring. After what we went through the over 18 months with Ange Postecoglou, the ups, the downs, the wins, the defeats, and the emotional turmoil that we went through. Yeah, I'll be forever grateful for Ange giving me the night against Manchester United. Don't get me wrong. I'd be forever in his debt. Not only the third manager in our history to win a European trophy after Bill, Nick, and Keith Birkinshaw. He'll go down as a club legend. But we need a bit of boring. And I don't mind. I don't mind watching a game that's probably a bit boring, because I know Thomas Frank will get it right. And all these people that want Thomas Frank out or are complaining about Thomas Frank football. Well, want you, as Soren said, want you the same fans complaining about Ange ball? Want you the same fans complaining about Conte ball? Want you the same fans complaining about Nuno ball? Do you know? Nobody's ever going to get it spot on. To win football matches, to win championships, to win cups, to win leagues, you have to play a more defensive type of football. You win your leagues. Absolutely, we're building a foundation at the back. That's how you win championships. I'm ignoring that comment, but bang up, Daniel Howard. So I was in the zone. But you win leagues.
Darmo was blacking out. He didn't even know what he was saying. It was just flowing. You've ruined it now, Daniel.
No, you win leagues by building a foundation which is at the back. How come Alex Ferguson won so many leagues and so many championships? It wasn't, the class of 92 helped, but he had a solid defense and a solid goalkeeper that won in points. If you go away from home, you get at least a point away from home. You win your home games and get a point away from home. And we're never satisfied as a fan base, because it's either one way or the other. We're finding Thomas Frank too boring. We want a manager like Ange Postecoglou. But once he doesn't get it right, then we're going to bang on, we want Conte ball again. The problem is we haven't got the personnel to do the job. Now, we're going to find that out in January and next summer. Was that Daniel Levy or was it the Lewis family? And then we will find out. Yeah. I wish it was an AI, believe me. I'll make a very better looking AI than I am.
Guillermo's had this speech written out for about 10 years. It's on a piece of paper in front of him. And now it's just
too right, Soren.
Time.
But the problem is we're going to see in January next summer, is it a Conte is it a Levy problem or was it a Lewis problem? Then we'll know. But you can't blame every manager just because the club won't buy the right players. And yes, we sold Harry Kane. Yes, we sold Sonny. You know, then players moved on. And yes, I was one of the ones that said we need to sell Harry. If he doesn't want to be here, sell him, get the money for him. Yeah, I was proved wrong. And do you know what I mean? But We're now facing a job where we need 2 players to do the 1 striker role.
Yeah.
Because that's why Dominic Solanke does the 1 part of it. So you're going to need another striker to do the 2nd part of it.
Right now we have 4 and none of them can do it. 2 of them ain't
look,
available.
I always said, just very quickly, just very quickly, I always said, and I stick by this to the day I die, that you stick Dominic Solanke as a player that holds up the ball, brings other players in, and you stick Brennan Johnson just on the goal line. That's all he's got to do, sit in the 6-yard area. That will work. Because Brennan Johnson is good at getting your goals in the 6-yard area. You have another striker that sits in the number 10, that does all the Harry Kane work, bringing the players in, putting the passes in, and you tell Brennan Johnson, you sit in that 6-yard goal area. You do not move from there. That is your job to score us goals.
But is that not a part of the problem, though, Dermot, is the limitations, right? The fact that we're saying to players, like, you know, if you've got a good front line, you've got a player that can control the ball, pass the ball, beat his man, cross the ball, you know, and also strike a ball. You know, that's a competent front line. We're almost getting to the point where we're going to a player, forget 9/3 or forget 2/3 of your job. You just go and sit in the 6-yard box. That's already shown that we are limited in terms of, you know, options going forward. And I'm sorry, but we can't go down that route. You know, he's part of the problem. We shouldn't be sitting there and going, well, let's play to his strengths. No, I'm sorry. He's part of the problem.
Yeah,
he's got to go.
But it's like Rayman says in the chat, and him and me have had a bit of discussion about it. I don't think Dean Scarlett's going to be your striker either, because I don't think he's proved enough to me that he can do it in the Premier League. He's another parrot.
But it's better than persisting with Richarlison right now.
Well, look, we're stuck with Richarlison. Sorry, go on. No,
I was just going to say, just to quickly jump back, I'm going to disagree with something you said back then, where you said you were one of the ones that agreed with Harry Kane being sold, but then was proven wrong. No, you weren't proven wrong, because he would have only stayed for 1 season, then gone on a free. So what would we have gained?
You don't need to rehash this.
What did we get out of it? Matisse Tell, we may as well let him go on a free. No one wants
Matisse
Tell. Anyway, we're not getting into Harry Kane.
We're not rehashing.
No, I know we're not getting into Harry Kane, but it's about time people realise that all teams move on when a striker or a player leaves. And
the reason why it was wrong, Soren, is because as soon as the Harry Kane rumours come out, everyone's clamouring for him to come back. And I guarantee you, the majority of them people said, you know, it was a good idea to sell him. Anyway, we're not getting into that right now.
The only point is going to prove in January, we need the striker up front. Richie's not your man. We know Matisse Tell's not good enough. We know Odegaard's not good enough. I don't blame Richie, because Richie is Richie. Love him to death. Love his shithousery. He tries, but I've noticed it against Brighton and I noticed it against Wolves. He tries to gain fouls out of central defenders that he's not getting. The referees are not giving him. He did it against Brighton when we conceded the 2nd goal. That he tried the foul and he never got it. We've got to back Frank in January, and we've got to back him next summer. But Thomas Frank is the man to take us forward. Thomas Frank, and I agree a lot what Jack said as well. You need, maybe having a defensive manager isn't such a bad thing.
I don't think it's a defensive manager that we're looking for. I think Stevie Fraser said it. I think with Thomas Frank, he showed that he can bring in and put in a defensive foundation, which is what every team needs if you want to go and compete and you want to try and win trophies and league titles. But you still have to bring in that attacking element to it. You know,
you do.
Jose Mourinho, although a defensive manager, he still had great forward players that can go and win in games.
Same but that's Conte. The club backing them, though. The clubs have to back them.
Exactly,
and,
you know,
and that's where we're going to find out. Look, was it Lewis? Was it the Lewis family, or was it Levy?
What I'm saying is like we don't need to sit here and go, Frank's a defensive manager. I don't think he is. I think Frank realizes, you know, there's different ways to win games, and you know, over the course of the season, you're going to have to show different sides to you. So you know, you are going to have that time sit in and soak up pressure and stuff like that. But I don't think in general, you know, that he has to be defensive. He's got a lot of the structure there. That structure is good enough to keep a lot of possession. We see that. It's what we do with that possession. Once we actually start killing teams and start, because I think right now, you know, there's a lot of debate. People go, but we create a lot of chances. And I think there's a massive difference between actually creating a lot of chances and actually being in great attacking positions. Massive difference. We get into a lot of great attacking positions, but actually off the back of it, we don't actually create a lot of chances that them attacking positions allow us to. And that's your problem right there, you know, and then you're sort of relying on maybe 2-3 clear-cut half chances, and everyone goes, oh, we've created a lot of chances. No, we got into great attacking positions. We didn't do a lot with it. You know, Doncaster, got into great attacking positions down that Wolves, great attacking positions down that left-hand side. How many crosses came off the fullback? But I think people get that mixed up and go, well, that's a chance. Great. No, it's an opportunity to create a chance that we didn't take. Once Frank addresses that and rectifies that, we will be a good outfit and we will look like a more attacking team with a great defensive structure behind it. I do think Frank will get it right at Tottenham. I do think he's the right guy. It's just going to require patience. But I'm going to sum it up, this whole conversation here with Frank, because I do have 2 or 3 other conversations I want to have. So I'm going to sum it up with Tanner Webster here. It says, champions find a way. And that's what we're doing right now. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, Tanner. Absolutely spot on. DB, I think you're absolutely right. I think Jack's sort of multitasking here today.
These blinds are doing F all right now. I swear, I'm trying to twist them both directions, and the sun is just so perfectly just piercing through this window. It's just doing F all right now.
And then we also have Raven Raju says, smash the likes, guys. Support this channel. Really appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. Guys, I know you hear a lot of YouTubers say smash the likes, and I know it can get boring and repetitive, but it's also important that you guys sort of know why. Because at the end of the day, there's so many content creators out there. Everyone's trying to do it. So everyone's competing for likes. Everyone's competing to get into that algorithm. The more you smash the likes, the more it puts your boys into the algorithm, the more it allows your boys to thrive and stuff like that. So you would really be helping us out massively. And also you keep flocking back here for match day, which means you like the content and stuff like that. So it just helps us improve it. Like we're going to show you on the watch along after this game. Make sure you tune in and feast your eyes on that layout. Also, there's plenty of ways if you do want to get involved and support the channel. You can do that by grabbing memberships, gifting memberships to other people if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to feel selfish and be generous, you can do that. Or feel free to get involved, with the conversation. As you can see, we're very good at bringing up as many comments as we can, trying to include everybody at home. We value your time. But you can also send it in the super chat if that's what you would like to do. And all that really helps us sort of kick on and push on and, basically all the ideas that we have, sort of go and try and execute them and stuff like that. So really appreciate all the support so far today, guys, and just keep engaging with us. The next 3 conversations we are going to have, though, the next one is about Vicario, and then another one about Bentancur. Can he play in beside Paulinho? I've seen a lot of that pop up recently. And maybe Papa Matasar. So what I'm going to do is actually something unusual. What conversation do you on the panel want to have next? And you at home? Let me know in the comments. Get it in quick. But do you want to talk about the Bentancur Paulinho? Actually, probably it's only right, actually, off the back of maybe talking about the attack. Let's do talk about Bentancur and Paulinho. Let me get my question. It took me ages to configure yesterday. So there's been a lot of noise lately from Spurs fans suggesting that Bentancur just doesn't work in the midfield, especially when paired with João Paulinho. Now, myself and Jack aren't fully buying that narrative. So I want to know maybe what Soren and Dermot think first, and then me and Jack will probably come in and rebuttal. Is it a lack of balance with it in there? Maybe too defensive, not mobile enough? What is it? Or are fans maybe just being overly critical because the goals and flashy moments aren't there? Let me know your thoughts on that. But just quickly, I want to take Faz Radfar's comments as well. He says, Frank has been good at getting zero right, not the 4. Oh, yeah, absolutely spot on in terms of the clean sheets. You're absolutely spot on that one, Faz Radfar. I think we were already halfway towards the tally we were
literally
in terms of clean sheets. So he's definitely rectified that. But I think, people are right. Just until we do get the likes of a Kulusevski back, Moani and stuff, I think we're just going to have to sort of grin and bear, and sort of maybe just be smarter, and realize it is more of a player issue than, maybe Frank's ability to be able to manage a team in general. Faz Radfar, although I do think there is an element to it that maybe having more possession at Tottenham, there are parts he's still learning. Big up, Faz. Anyway, guys, Paulinho and Bentancur, and I want to hear your guys' thoughts about this at home, because it's a narrative I am going to push back on because I completely disagree with it. But Soren, Dermo, where are you at with that midfield pairing? Because a lot of people are starting to become disgruntled with it. What's the problem?
I don't think there's a problem. I like Bentancur and Paulinho together. I think they work well together. You look how they worked against Manchester City. They worked absolutely seamlessly. I just want this Bentancur contract sorted out, because I thought against Wolves he didn't really put a lot of effort into it, in my opinion. He wasn't jumping for balls. There was a lot of Wolves players that were jumping above him. He wasn't sort of giving it his all. So I wonder if this contract thing has something to do with it. If he doesn't sign the contract, he can go for nothing. He can sign for somebody else in January, because he'll have 6 months left in his contract. I think we should sign him up because him and Paulinho work really well together. I like Bentancur. I call him Uruguay in general because when he gets going in that midfield, he brings balance to that midfield. And where Paulinho as well, it gives him a little bit more license to move forward a little bit because he knows, right, I've got my central DM partner there. I can move forward, or Paulinho can go forward. There's a lot of confidence between the two of them. Paulinho, for me, just sign him up now, please. Just do it. Just get it over and done with. He's been an absolute number 6 we've been missing for years. And he's came in, and that goal he scored was absolutely fantastic against Wolves. The one thing that's annoying me, and it really is annoying me, and I think it was a mistake last season, was getting rid of Højbjerg. Because I think Højbjerg and Paulinho together and Bentancur, I think that would be a really good midfield. And I'm really, really disappointed that we didn't use Højbjerg more when we could have used him. We could have needed him last season. And I think I said it during that bit that we needed Højbjerg. And I think if he stayed, I think that midfield tree, because Højbjerg had a chance, right? He could pass the ball. He could sit in that midfield and do the attacking stuff where you got Paulinho and Bentancur sitting at the back, as a double pivot. That midfield 3 would have worked. I think Sar's doing brilliant with Bentancur and Paulinho, but I just felt them 3 together would have made a better 3. But yeah, sign up Paulinho now and Bentancur, get his contract sorted out because we need him in that midfield.
So Dermot does like that midfield. That's interesting. He's sort of on the same side as myself and Jack. Just quickly, Davy Shire, good to see you, Cobber. He says, remember for 23 months. Wow. And he says, come on, you fucking Spurs. Big up, Davy. Good to see you.
Very generous.
All the way, still tuning in all the way from Oz. And he says, good day, guys. And then he also says, it was a lovely day at the seaside. Well, hopefully you enjoyed your day out, Davy. Hopefully you and the family are keeping well, my man, and in a better place now than when we last maybe conversated, my man. Big up, Davy. Good to see you in the house. Hopefully you're keeping well. Soren, what do you think the problem is with this Bentancur and Paulinho midfield? Because it is something I was quite surprised to see pop up on socials after recent games, that people are sort of going after it, saying it's too defensive, and stuff like that. Would you agree with that narrative?
I'm just going to start off with Dermo was doing so well, and then he goes and talks a load of crap at the end. Look, I mean, I was one of Pierre's biggest fans. I loved what he did, but yeah, he's gone. And I don't think he'd work with Paulinho. He was too slow, made a few too many mistakes, but great player, fantastic time with us, and wish him well. But look, Paulinho and Bentancur, this goes back to the discussion we've basically been having all night, where it's a very defensive system when you play them 2 together. And that's what Frank's asking for. He wants the stability, he wants the tightness in the midfield. Now, I think what I would like to see is, we saw Archie Gray play the number 8 role, and he played it bloody well. I mean, yes, it was only against Doncaster maybe, but why not give him a chance to see that? And you've got that defensive stroke attacking formation still. And that's what I would like to see. But is it too defensive? Yes, it is. Is it needed? Yes, it is. Should we rip it up? No. And it's like we were saying the last time, there'll be games where we've got to play defensive, and there'll be games where we've got to play attacking. And if we've got to play defensive, then surely Bentancur, with his experience, has got to be one of those players that's on the team sheet. And is the type of player that when he plays and when he's on it, he's bloody good. But when he's not on it, he is really bad, and he shows up so much that he's just not there. He's lacking. But look, if he's not going to play, if he's not going to sign a new contract, then we've got to be starting to play the likes of Archie Gray or Papsar. I mean, what's Papsar done wrong this year? But yet he's struggling to get in the team.
Well, he was injured.
Well, yeah, but I mean, even before he was injured, he wasn't necessarily always on the team sheet as a starter. So I think we've got enough without Bentancur, but I also think Bentancur has a big part to play within the team. So
I'll be honest.
I can. Or yeah, you go, Dave.
Just
You go.
quickly, I'm going to tee you up here, Jack. I'm just going to be quick. I disagree with it being too defensive. I think people's frustrations on the forward line are now starting to be taken out on the likes of Paulinia and Bentancur, and they're expecting them now to start being the creators and scoring goals. But yet, in the same breath, you have them going out protecting Matisse Tal anytime anyone criticizes them, protecting Brendan Johnson anytime criticizes them. Same with Odegaard, same with Richarlison, same with Solanke. But yet, they'll have no problem going with that midfield pair is too defensive. Their job is to protect that back line. One job is to protect the back line. The other's job is also to get on the ball and sort of dictate the tempo for Tottenham. Bentancur does that. He puts the ball into them forward players. He gets the ball into the camp. Just because they're not creating, it doesn't mean we should start pushing the problem further back and going, oh, Bentancur's the problem. So and I think that's what's happening here. But Jack, let you come in also on your thoughts on it, but also flip it. Maybe highlight what you think they also do well that maybe people are missing.
I can admit when Bentancur has a bad game because I really like Bentancur, but I am always a bit amazed by how quickly people are to say that he's the problem or he needs to be sold or he's not good enough. Like the man was easily one of our best players in the Champions League final. Like him and Pop Matasar were absolutely bossing it in that midfield that day. And I would say against PSG, he was also one of the best players on that day against PSG. I think Bentancur has had plenty of incredible performances that seem to just get quickly forgotten about. And then he, for whatever reason, is kind of the source of blame for when things I think are going wrong on different areas of the pitch. I feel like we're seeing the forward line put in absolute stinkers. And then for some reason, Bentancur is then blamed for it. I would argue he's a guy that's one of the tidiest on the ball that we have in this team. He's very, very controlled with it. And he doesn't give it away as often as Bergwall does, as often as other people do in the midfield. He's a very he's a very composed player. And I'm sometimes shocked with how much criticism he gets or how much blame he gets. I'm willing to admit when he has a bad game, but I'm just usually surprised by it. I think Paulinia and him have had good games together. Like we've seen it, like I mentioned, against PSG, I believe against Man City as well. Some of our best performances came when they were in the midfield together, but they've also had some bad performances here and there. It's just, I don't know if it was necessarily Bentancur's fault that was the reason, he failed in the midfield. So that's just my take on things. He's had so many days where he's had so many games, like in the road to the Champions League final. He was easily one of our best players, like, carrying that midfield, playing as the number 6. So I'm just sometimes amazed by how quickly people are to forget about that.
I think also,
Jack, the interesting thing is if we go back a year or two and even back into Conte's reign, we were all complaining how weak our midfield was. And then all of a sudden we get a strong midfield that's quite defensive and we're moaning again. What do people actually want?
It only looks defensive because the 4 players.
No, but I don't mean it
right now.
Yeah, but I don't mean it in that way. What I mean is, it's a solid midfield that's good at doing what it's meant to do and sort of nulling out the opposition. And look, if we put, say we had Maddison and Xavi in the centre with Paulinho, we'd be getting overrun. So what do people want? Do they want a solid midfield that can defend well and progress it forward if they have to? Or do we want a weaker midfield that is going to let teams overrun us? So
I think the argument for me is I think Gray, in my opinion, has a lot to learn, but he would be your like for like in terms of, putting him in for Paulinia. Now, with Bergwall, I've sort of pointed out, yes, he came off the bench against Bournemouth, for Bentancur and took the game to them and looked better. But the last 2 games, he's took Bentancur off and dropped Bergwall back there. We've looked worse. We've sort of lost that control. To your point, teams start running through us, and I sort of agree with you on that. I think maybe the only happy medium would eventually be maybe Papa Matasar sliding in beside, say, João Paulinia. But right now, because he offers so much in terms of that cam position, you can see what he offered straight off the bench against Wolves, right? People go, oh, look at Matisse Tal, he got the assist. The guy put a hopeful ball into the box. Papa Matasar put his leg head high, pulled that ball down, laid it off. He affects games. You look at nearly every goal Spurs have scored this season. Papa Matasar has either assisted it or turn the ball over that has led to that counter-attack higher up the pitch. At the end of the day, right now, we're not a good enough team to be able to do 10, 15 passes to rip a team open. So Frank is relying on Sarr in that number 10 role to go and turn ball higher up over the pitch. So when we turn it over, we've only got one pass and we're in on the goal. When we start getting options like your Kulizeskis, your Moanis, your Solankis back, you free up Simmons then to go into the number 10, which then means you free up Papamata Sarr to play in that sort of deeper position. But right now, for me, I don't think we should be breaking up Paulinho and Bentancur. You know, Paulinho gives you that steal. He's also, you know, he can nick a couple of goals in the box. We've seen that so far this season. But Bentancur, for me, is also, he gives you that defensive solidity more than what maybe Bergvall does in that position, or more than what Brady even does in that position. But also, I think he's the most composed on the ball in midfield. You know, I would argue he's much better on the ball than I think Paulinho is. I think Paulinho, you know, in terms of sometimes he gives away a lot of possession in midfield, turns over a lot of ball, but there's a lot of sloppy passes from him, where I think Bentancur, at times, that guy takes the ball under pressure, draws two players into it and then pops it off. You know, his job is to sort of just progress that ball, take it off the back line and help transition it down that left-hand side. It's not his fault Xavi Simons can't create when he gets it. It's not his fault Destiny Udogie doesn't know how to cross a ball. It's not his fault Richarlison's never in the right position to get on the end of it. And I just think what we're seeing is people putting the problems on players further back, going, it's not creative enough. But then what are we paying the other four in the team to do that play ahead of them?
Yeah.
I think also the problem is if the attack was working, nobody would be talking about the defensive issues, because they'd be talking. And also, don't forget, Bentancur's come back from an ACL. I mean, nobody's ever the same player when they get a serious injury like that. Normally comes back the same. So maybe he's had to adjust his game. Maybe he's had to do something within his game that he can't do the same thing. But for me, Paulinho and Bentancur is the best midfield. The lineup's out. Ooh, cool.
Yeah, the lineups are out. We'll go through them here quickly with you, Dermo, and then we'll let you plug your channel, let you bounce out. I know you've places to be. So in goals, we have Guglielmo Vicario retains his place despite what people will call another error at the weekend. Of course, Romero didn't travel, which means Danzo will come in and partner Van de Ven at centre back. We've got Pedro Porro at right back and Spence coming in at left back. In midfield, we have Bergvall and Bentancur, it looks like, as your two holding midfielders. Sarr, maybe Sarr goes in there as the holding midfielder. Bergvall then as the cam. And then you have Udebur off one side. You have Brennan Johnson off the other. And Richarlison through the middle. So no kudos tonight. He is on the bench alongside Destiny Udogie, Ben Davies, Dane Scarlett, Gray, Simmons, Paulinho, Austin, and Kinski. Thomas Frank has decided to rotate once again. I'm not being funny. I worry about this rotation. You know, I worry more so about the forward line. I think I'm okay with the rotation across the back line and the midfield. In general, I don't think it cost us. Maybe leaving Papamata Sarr out the last couple of games has definitely cost us. I think Frank needs to realize that Papamata Sarr has to play in this team. He gives that energy in them legs that lot, and not a lot of others sort of offer us. But I'm not going to lie, I really do worry about this forward line. If Brennan Johnson starts getting on the ball and passing that backwards, we're not going to create an awful lot. Wilson Odegaard runs at his guy, but there's not a lot of end product off the back of it. And Richarlison can barely trap a bag of cement. So, I mean, I see problems on the horizon. I just hope it's one of them nights we can maybe get over the line now is maybe what I'm hoping for. Dermo, we'll get your quick thoughts, let you plug your channel, let you bounce out.
It's a team that should do the job tonight. I can understand the change at the back. Look, I think Vicario did make a mistake at the weekend. That's 2-2. So let's hopefully he can have a mistake-free weekend game tonight. Look, I'm not happy with the midfield. I would have rested Bergvall. I would have started Paulinho and Bentancur. They'd start with even for the first hour, and then put Sarr as a number 10. Look, the front three is the front three. There's nothing we can do about it until we get our players back. We just got to hope and pray that they do something. Johnson tonight, I've been very supportive of Johnson. I've been really critical of him this season. His head stuck up his arse from the end of last season. He needs to take his head out of his arse and actually do what he is paid to do, which is to play football, not to act as Casper the Ghost's appearance person. So yeah, for me, it is what it is. I think we'll win tonight 3-0, or 3-0 or 3-1. But that front three does not inspire me to even get out of bed in the morning, but it is what it is. Yeah, if you like what I have to say, THFC till we die, we're on the march to 3K. We're nearly at 2,200, so we're all just sort of 11 away. So I'd love to get there before the weekend for the next international break, guys. If you can do that, I really would appreciate it. But yeah, we're on the march to 3K. So yeah, like and subscribe and do it here first. These guys gave me my break nearly 4 years ago, and I'm forever grateful for what they've done for me over the years. Been really good friends on and off YouTube, and people that I can really depend on, and the only two people I fully trust on YouTube. So thank you guys, and Soren as well.
Appreciate that, Dermo. You had a really good show today. Appreciate it. Great to have you back, my man. We'll speak to you again soon. Hopefully we get the win tonight.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And hopefully it won't be too long before you have me on again. I enjoy coming on here. I really do. I love annoying the chat. That's why I love doing that. I love winding up the chat.
Well, a lot of them agreed with you today, which maybe I maybe question some of their sanity out there. But anyway, big up, Dermo. We'll speak to you again soon, lad.
Yeah, speak to you later. Come on, you Spurs.
See you later, Dermo.
See you, John.
See you later. Bye-bye. So there you have it, guys. There is the lineup. That's Dermot's thoughts. I mean, I'll save Jack's thoughts for the watch along. I'm pretty sure he's going to need a half an hour to calm down. Soren, how are you keeping? Or not? How are you keeping? What's your thoughts on the lineup, buddy? A bit surprised. Again, I just worries at night where rotation is going to come back and cost us.
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Kind of. I'm more surprised, but then I suppose we haven't got much of an alternative that Van der Ven's playing. Because I think these are the type of games
why not play Kudus and Simmons? We bought these guys in for big money for nights like these so that we don't have to go through and watch this shite. That these guys are supposed to come in here and sort of help bring this forward line, forward. At the end of the day, if he keeps rotating them, how is he expecting any of them to gather any sort of consistency, any sort of, way of playing together, any sort of link-up play when he keeps rotating it? I think, look, I'm fine with the rotation in midfield and the back line. It's not really going to cost us, but that forward line is.
I mean, I disagree with that. I think it's a good idea to rest Simmons tonight. Probably Kudus as well, because saving them for the Premiership in the sense of this is probably
games in. We're 7 or 8 games into.
No, I know, but you kind of look at it and think Simmons is a bigger picture than tonight. Kudus is a bigger picture than tonight, and in theory, this is probably one of the games that we should be looking to win, kind of almost whichever team we put out. And I just think with Simmons that, I'm not surprised he's been dropped. Well, not dropped, but rotated. Kudus probably ready for a break anyway. I'm kind of more surprised, but then I suppose when you look at it, Benton Kerr's the experience in there that maybe Ray wasn't playing. Look, it's the team that's going out there. I think it's strong enough to go out there and win. I think we're going to expect a lot from Johnson and Odebear. I think they're going to have to be on it tonight. But then Johnson played against them last time, so he knows what's happening. Papsar, energy, should be okay. So yeah, I think it's a team that has to go out there and show what they can do for once. They've got to be on it. It's as good a team as kind of expected. We knew there'd be rotation. We knew tonight was a night that we weren't probably going to play the strongest team, because this is the argument that this is what we all wanted from Ange last year, to do some rotation. Maybe it's too much so far this season, but I think we're going to expect it. I think this is something you're going to see from Thomas Frank quite a lot, that we will rotate a lot, and he's proving that we are. And look, we've just got to get behind these players and hope they do win. They're good enough to win. So, yeah, it's game time.
Look, I don't disagree with the sort of sentiment that, regardless who we put out there tonight, we should be good enough to beat Bodo Glimt. The reality is, if you don't score goals, you don't create opportunities, which that forward line has struggled mostly. It's hard to even win against teams like Bodo. I just worry about it. I think he's made our night more difficult. I wonder there's a bit of an inexperience being in this Champions League. If everyone wants rotation, why not pick your strongest team in these groups, in these early games, guarantee your 3 points, and then rotate towards the end of the Champions League campaign when your job is done? You know, people are praising rotation. We're fucking 8 games into the season. Now isn't the time you need to be rotating. You know,
I agree. I agree.
I'd argue. I think not starting Xavi against Brighton cost us. I think some of these changes for the Wolves game have cost us. I'll be honest. I think it's getting to the point where it's just getting silly now. You know, at the end of the day, the forward line ain't clicking. But the only way you're going to get any sort of anything back out of it is by continuing to play your better players that are available, like your Kudos, like your Simmons, and start getting them up to speed, start getting them clicking and stuff and like that. Keep rotating them and bringing in a Nudeber and a Johnson, players who haven't really shown that they can contribute, to try and provide a guy up front who can't do anything right now. I think it's a recipe for disaster. However, I'm going to back the boys. We'll get into it and we'll see how it goes. To Soren's point, it should be good enough to beat Bodo Glimt. Paul Dawson says, stop moaning all the time. Frank's a good manager. I'm old school. Tottenham went in the 70s and 80s. When our players get back from injury, we'll be fine. Top 4. First of all, I'm not moaning. All I done was bring up, you know, in terms of like the style of play and the attacking thing. Because Thomas Frank. What's going on there? Because Thomas Frank. Because Thomas Frank, you know, has brought it up himself, you know, so it's not moaning, it's just talking about things he's already addressing in his press conferences. But anyway, guys, like I said, make sure you come back to us in about half an hour's time for the watch along. We're going to have a new layout, a new look for you. You know, you shouldn't need to go anywhere else. We should have everything you need, you know, to make your own analysis of the game on screen. I want to say a massive thank you. Oh, sorry, quickly, sorry, what's your score prediction?
2-0.
2-0. Yeah. Well, I think, look, I'll take it at the end of the day. I just want the 3 points on the board. You know, that's all I want at the end of the day. Don't get me wrong. I do think, you know, he should be using these games now to get their confidence in the forward line for the bigger games coming ahead. But we'll see. And Ribsy says, Bodo Glimt. Glimt. I called him Bodo Glimt. He says, I'm so clever. Big yourself up. And then Shawnee Maddox says, Dave, if you don't think the squad is good enough to compete in all 4 fronts, why are you mad about it? I don't even know what you're talking about, Shawnee. At the end of the day, I said the expectation is for them to compete on all 4 fronts. You know, regardless whether I think the squad is good enough or not, that is the expectation placed on everyone that comes to Tottenham Hotspur. And I think you also need to realise that instead of making excuses for not competing all the time. And in fact, if you adopted my mentality, it might actually make you help make you play better in pro clubs, actually. You know, winning mentality, Shawnee. But anyway, guys, that's it from us. We'll be back here in half an hour's time for the watch along. I want to say a massive thank you to our panel today, Jack, Soren, and Dermot. Really appreciate all of you guys as well, you know, for turning up and conversating with us today. All you guys at home as well, over 500 in-house for the majority of the stream. Really appreciate all your support today. It's been absolutely immense. And then I also want to say thank you to the people that have gone the extra mile to help show support our way today. And that has gone from Eddie, Paul Markey, Hull Spurs. We also have Reefer, Foggy Foam, and also Paul Markey again, along with Brian Dempsey, Faz Radfar, and Davy Shire. Really appreciate all the support, guys. Smash a like on your way out. We'll go and get your dinner, get your drinks ready. Join us back here for the watch along as Tottenham take on Bodo Glimt, the repeated Europa League semi-final last year. We return to the scene of one of the greatest nights of my life, where we cemented our place in a European final. Let's see if we can go and get the 3 points tonight and put ourselves in pole position to get out of the Champions League phase. See you back here in half an hour. Come on, you fucking Spurs. Let's go.
Come on, you Spurs.